start in the middle of the moment you said yes again. Not because you wanted to. Not because you had peace. Not because it was aligned. You said yes because saying no would have created a conversation you didn't feel like having. So you carried it. You smiled. You answered the message. You showed up. You handled the thing. You became dependable again. And everybody walked away thinking, he's good. She's got it. They always come through. But later, when the room got quiet, when nobody needed anything from you, when the performance was over, something in you started talking. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just honest. I'm tired of this. But here's the point. But here's the part most people don't want to admit. Sometimes resentment is not proof that people used you. Sometimes resentment is proof that you kept volunteering for a life your soul was trying to resign from. Because today, we're not blaming everybody else. We are going deeper than that. Today, we are confronting the resentment you built by saying yes too long, too many times. Welcome back to the Eminence Legacy podcast. I'm Jose Luis Cadena, and this is for the legacy builders who keep carrying weight. But deep down, you know, some of that weight was never supposed to make it this far. Let me be clear, this is not a therapy session. This is a wake-up session. Because if you keep calling everything responsibility, you may never admit where responsibility turned into resentment. And if you never admit that, you will keep bleeding internally while everybody keeps applauding your strength. Now let's get into it. Most people think resentment shows up because they are tired. No, that's not the reason. Tired is what your body feels. Resentment is what your spirit starts building. When you keep violating what you know is true, you knew you were full. You knew you were done with it. But you said yes. You knew the conversation needed to happen. But you stayed quiet. You knew the argument was no longer healthy. But you kept showing up like nothing was wrong. You knew you needed a boundary, but you convinced yourself it's not serious. I'll deal with it later. I don't want to make things awkward. I do not want to disappoint them. I do not want to be selfish. And little by little, you didn't just give your time away. You gave pieces of yourself away. You gave away your peace, and now you're wondering why your patience is thinner, why your tone is sharper, why small things irritate you, why you feel heavy before the day even starts, why certain names flashing on your screen makes your stomach drop. It's not random. That's not just stress. That is not just a bad mood. That is the receipt. Resentment is a receipt for the boundaries you refuse to set. Let me stop you right here. Because some of you are already trying to defend it. In your mind, you're saying, but I had to. No one else was going to do it. They needed me. I'm just trying to be responsible. Listen, responsibility without honesty turns into a quiet rebellion. You may still show up, but now you show up bitter. You may still help, but now you help with a hidden attitude. You may still serve, but now service starts feeling like a sentence. And that is dangerous because you can look faithful on the outside while becoming resentful on the inside. You can look dependable while slowly despising the role everybody keeps praising you for. Don't call it loyalty if it's costing you your integrity. Don't call it humility if you're using it to avoid confrontation. And definitely don't call it love if bitterness is growing underneath, because real love requires truth. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop lying with your availability. Now, here's what's really happening. You are not angry that they asked. You are enraged that you said yes. That's a pain under the pain. That is what you're feeling. You are not just frustrated that they expected you to come through. You're frustrated because part of you taught them that you always would, even when it was costing you. And now you are trapped in a version of yourself that everybody trusts, but you don't even enjoy being anymore. That's a heart mirror, because it's easier to say, they keep taking advantage of me. It's harder to say, I keep giving access without telling the truth, without stopping it, without setting my boundaries. It's easier to say, they do not appreciate me. It is harder to say, I never clearly communicated what this was costing me. It is easier to say, nobody checks on me. It is harder to say, I built an image of strength so convincing that people believed I didn't need support. That one stings. But growth does that. It stings before it frees you. And here's something to think about. You agreed when you were already full. The first way resentment gets built is when you keep agreeing after you are already full. You have no room, no margin, no real capacity. But you still said yes. Why? Because you like being needed. Let's tell the truth. Sometimes it's not just responsibility. Sometimes being needed makes you feel valuable. It makes you feel important. It makes you feel like you have a place, like you belong. But if your value depends on being needed, you will keep letting people drain you just so you don't feel useless. That's not service. That's identity confusion. There's a difference between serving from love and serving from the fear of not mattering. One gives life and the other drains you. And some people listening right now, you are not exhausted because you care too much. You are exhausted because you attach your worth to being the one everybody can call. But here's the truth. You can be valuable without being constantly available. You can be loving without being endlessly accessible. You can be responsible without being the emergency contact for everybody's lack of discipline. That is not cold. That is order. Even Jesus withdrew from crowds. Even Jesus rested. Even Jesus did not heal every person in every town at every moment. So who told you that being faithful means being available? Until there is nothing left of you. Until there is nothing left of you. See, you stayed silent when something needed to be said. The second way resentment gets built is silence. Not peaceful silence. Not wise silence. Fearful silence. The kind where something is bothering you, but you keep swallowing it. You keep taking it. You keep saying, it's fine, but it's not fine. You keep saying, no worries, but there are worries. You keep saying, I got it, but inside, you're thinking, why am I always the one who has to get it? And every time you swallow the truth to avoid discomfort, you don't erase the truth, you store it. And you stored truth turns toxic. That's why months later, one small thing happens and you explode. Not because that one moment was big, but because that moment stepped on everything you never said. That's why some arguments sound exaggerated. They are not about today. They are about every truth that got buried before today arrived. You didn't blow up out of nowhere. You blew up from the basement because that's where you've been storing everything. And hear me clearly. Avoiding conversations don't disappear. They collect interest. Every excuse has a due date. And when the bill comes due, it usually costs more than the conversation would have cost in the beginning. See, when you called it responsibility, when it was really fear, the third way resentment gets built is when fear dresses itself up as responsibility. This is a sneaky one because it sounds noble. I'm just doing what I have to do. I'm just being mature. I'm just keeping the peace. I'm just being strong. Maybe it's true, but maybe it's not. Maybe you are afraid to disappoint people. Maybe you are afraid they won't understand. Maybe you are afraid they will see you differently. Maybe you are afraid that if you stop carrying everything, people will stop seeing you as valuable. So you keep carrying, not because God asked you to, not because it's wise, not because it's aligned, but because fear convinced you that confrontation will cost too much. Let me ask you something. What has your silence been protecting? Peace or your image? Because some people are not keeping peace. They are protecting a version of themselves they no longer have the strength to perform. That's not peace. That's pressure in a nice outfit. And eventually, the outfit tears at the seams. So let's bring this home. Who are you quietly punishing for the yes you gave too freely? Sit with that. Who are you resenting because you didn't tell the truth early enough? Who are you blaming because you kept agreeing when wisdom had already warned you? And what part of your life are you calling responsibility when it's really delayed confrontation? Because here's the mirror. Some of your resentment is not coming from what people did to you. Some of it is coming from what you refuse to say for yourself. It's on you. That does not mean people didn't play a part. They may have. But the healing starts when you stop giving away all the power in your story. Because if it's only their fault, then only they can fix it. But if you take ownership back, if you can see where you participated, where you stayed silent, where you agreed, where you abandoned yourself, then now you have authority again over your emotions, over your life, over your decisions. And legacy builders do not live powerless. They confront, they adjust, and they build. So how do you stop building resentment? So what do we do? Not 10 steps, not a motivational fog machine. We keep it clean, to the point. Number 1, tell the truth earlier, not louder, earlier. Most people wait until they are angry before they become honest. That is why their honesty comes out like a weapon. But mature honesty does not need to explode. It says, I cannot commit to that right now. That doesn't work for me anymore. I need to be honest about what this is costing me. I want to help, but I cannot carry this the same way. That is not weakness. That is leadership. Truth told early prevents resentment from becoming a resident. Set boundaries before bitterness moves in. A boundary is not punishment. A boundary is an instruction. It teaches people how to approach life without destroying your peace. And let's be real. Some people won't like your boundary. That's okay. They were comfortable with the version of you that had none. Of course, the new version will feel inconvenient, but your growth is not required to ask permission from their comfort. Set the boundary, not with drama, not with speech, not with an emotional manifesto, just clarity, to the point. This is what I can do. This is what I cannot do. This is what needs to change. Simple, clean, and strong. Stop using responsibility as a hiding place. This is the one. Because responsibility is good. Serving is good. Showing up is good. But when responsibility becomes the excuse you use to avoid the truth, it stops being noble. It becomes a hiding place, and a hiding place eventually becomes a prison. So ask yourself, am I carrying this because it's mine, or because I'm afraid of what happens if I put it down? Am I saying yes because I'm called, or because I'm scared? Am I serving from love, or performing from fear? That question alone can change the temperature of your entire life. Scripture calls us to serve. Yes, it does. But service was never meant to become self-destruction. There's a difference between sacrifice and slow internal collapse. There's a difference between carrying your cross and carrying every burden people refuse to carry for themselves. Doing what is right matters. Serving with a clean heart matters. But your spirit cannot stay pure when resentment is being fed in silence. So before you call yourself faithful, ask if you have also been truthful. Because truth and love were never meant to be enemies. Legacy builders, this is your checkpoint. Not for later, now. It's for right now. Where have you said yes too long? Where has your silence started charging interest? Where are you still showing up physically, but emotionally, you already left the room? You're checked out. Where are you blaming people for crossing lines you never clearly drew? And what is one conversation you already know needs to happen and you're still delaying? Not someday, not when it gets worse, not when you finally explode, but soon. Because peace does not come from pretending something does not bother you. Peace comes when truth finally gets a seat on the table. Before we close, if this episode found you where you have been hiding, do not just nod and disappear. If you're listening to this on a web browser or link someone texted to you, don't let this be temporary visit. Hit the follow right now on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Legacy builders do not just visit truth. They stay connected to it. And if this episode made you think of someone, send it to them. Not with a long explanation. Just send it and say, listen to this one. Because somebody, you know, is carrying resentment they kept calling responsibility. And if you're realizing you don't just need more episodes, you need structure, you need accountability, you need a room where you stop drifting and start building with intention, then go to eminencelegacylife.com/Eminence Circle. Apply for the Eminence Circle. Some people keep listening, others finally build. The question is, which one are you becoming? Let's lock this in. Resentment is not always proof that people used you. Sometimes resentment is proof that you kept saying yes after wisdom already told you no. Responsibility without honesty turns into bitterness. Service without truth turns into silent frustration. And strength without boundaries eventually becomes self-betrayal. So tell the truth early. Set the boundaries before bitterness moves in. And stop hiding behind responsibility when what you really need is confrontation. Because next time, we're going after something even deeper. We're going to talk about what happens when you become addicted to being needed. When being the reliable one becomes your identity. When you do not know who you are unless somebody is depending on you. And that one is going to expose the hidden argument a lot of people made. I'll keep being needed, even if it costs me being known. Don't miss that. Resentment does not start as anger. It starts as a whisper, a small truth you ignored, a boundary you delayed, a yes you gave when everything in you knew it should have been a no. And if you do not confront it, that whisper becomes a wall. So today, don't just be strong, be honest, because the life you are called to build cannot be built on agreements your spirit keeps rejecting. This is the Eminence Legacy podcast. I'm Jose Luis Cadena, and remember, together, let's rise to our eminence. Catch you in the next one.